Probably will be.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll get into things, guys. Thank you so much for coming. I think we're all really excited about this one. I'm sure you can see the lineup. It's going to be hectic. I'm Chia. I'm from Firmable, and today we'll be running what the top performing SDRs are doing that your team isn't. So it's really about seeing what separates the top 1% of SDRs versus everyone else. And that's from mindset to motivation to coaching. And then on the other side of it, where it's AI powered tooling and prospecting workflows that really help you get on that and obviously get those sales. So really quick housekeeping is that we'll try and keep it to 45 today. Don't want to, separate you from your phones too long. And then split it into 2 rounds. And so round 1 will be an SDR, someone who used to be an SDR, I should say, and then the person who trained them, and then same thing for the next round. And we really want you guys to really get involved, put things into the chat, ask questions, don't be shy. We know SDRs aren't shy, so don't start acting shy all of a sudden. And before I hand it on to Jake, I'll just go through really quickly what we are and what we do at Firmable. So we essentially are your B2B database. So we really help you to find not just the right people to contact, but also the right timing. So it's around direction and also accuracy of data. I won't read too much about this. You guys can have a look. I'm sure you know those brands there. And we really double down on those phone numbers so that you can get, to the right people at the right time. So a little bit about us. Today's agenda, as I mentioned, we'll do the 2 parts. And then at the end, we'll have a bit of a demo and a Q&A. So stay around for that. You can keep putting questions in and we'll try and answer them as we go as well. But over to you, Jake.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you all for coming along. Great to have you guys here. Before we get into question 1, keen to hear from you guys out there. So I'm very keen to kind of get into the weirdest or the most unexpected thing you do to reset after a rough call, a rough morning. Some people are doing push-ups rather. Are you calling fake prospects to warm up? You got a hype song, you're channeling your inner Giuliano Massarali, if you know, you know. But yeah, drop it in the chat, please, guys. What are we doing to keep ourselves pumped up? Or if there's a bad call, what do we got?
What are you doing, Jake? What do you usually do?
What am I doing? I've got a list of people that I know are very friendly that I'll call and get myself hyped up. So I get some light wins, so to speak, so that I feel good about myself, so that I can then go on to the ones that are actually net new. Chair's listening to Gunner. I'm not sure if people can text in the box, Chair. Just got a Slack about it.
If not, just use the Q&A for now, and then we'll figure that out.
Okay.
Someone said pre-workout shots. Pre-workout shots. That's crazy.
Bit of a doom scroll on LinkedIn, maybe.
We got coffee. We got Tommy Melvin's having a cigarette, which will do the job. We've got some shadow boxing. That'll get you hyped up. Some D&B. We love it. Okay, team. We'll keep those coming through because I'm keen to laugh at them or bait them. Okay, we'll take that. Okay, we'll keep on moving then, and we'll actually introduce the people that you're here to hear from. So first up, we will get some intros, and if we could just keep it to 30 seconds, that'd be absolutely awesome. But first, we've got the legendary Dan Brockwell, trainer and advisor at Earlywork. So Dan, if you could just give us a quick 30-second overview of who you are and why you're here.
For sure. Thanks, Jake. Good to be on the show. Thank you guys for having me. Folks, my name is Dan. For those who haven't heard of Earlywork, I run the first sales school in Australia, teaching people about sales careers because the unis and TAFEs don't. As a part of that, we run 2 programs. One is a free sales employment pathway, help people land their first jobs, often as SDRs. And the second one is kind of a sales training program, teaching existing reps how do you book more meetings and close more deals, specifically in the Australian market. Prior to Earlywork, spent kind of my career primarily in the tech and startup industry, and originally cut my teeth in sales, working as an SMB account executive at Uber Eats, bringing restaurants on the platform in New Zealand back in 2018. That's me.
Thank you, Dan. That's wicked. And next, we have Juan, who was formerly pretty top SDR at Monday.com and has now made his way into an account executive role, which is great. We love to see that progression. And funny enough, I believe Dan actually trained Juan. So there you go. There's some connection there. So if you don't mind, over to you, Juan. Give us a bit of an intro. 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it short. I did have the pleasure to be will be wand by Dan, so it definitely shone through, thankfully. Yeah, as you said a couple of times, Juan here from Money.com, currently in AE for the SMB market here in the APAC region, and just supporting in general teams overall with our CRM, work management and service tools. And then now with AI madness, it's, the world's oyster. So it's really what can't you do on Money.com. From my end, as you mentioned, moved from a BDR, SDR role initially at HiBob, which is a HR tech business. And then I guess parlayed that into a BDR role into Monday and now in AE. Have had, I guess, a solid round of success and luck. I think it's a combination of both in this world, but to get to success is probably a combination of hard work and luck. And yeah, background in digital transformation, marketing, and a bit of brand and content creation. So from my end, yeah, heaps keen to have a chat today and get the ball rolling. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Juan. That's awesome. And then later on in the call, after we've covered off mindset and resilience, we're going to tap in Jelle, who is currently an SDR manager at Notion, and again was an SDR himself back in the day. Then in AE, now leads the team. So welcome, Jelle. If you don't mind, just giving us a bit of an overview.
Yeah, good to be here, guys. Appreciate the invite. So as Jake was saying, started off about 12, 13 years ago. Been in tech ever since, started as a BDR, account manager, and now supporting the team here in Sydney. Obviously, the name isn't very Australian, so I started off in Europe. I started with the landing team there at Notion, and then about 18 months ago, moved to Australia to help with the expansion in this market, because we noticed that Sydney at the moment has basically is one of the largest cities globally of active Notion users. So yeah, good to be here. More tropical than back in Ireland.
We love it. Thanks for that, mate. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Ben Hobbs. I'll let you do your own introduction, mate.
Cheers, mate. I was an SDR until fairly recently. Was moved in from a senior SDR to an AE recently. If you couldn't tell, from the UK. So I came over here from the UK about 2 years ago, and then got stuck in for about a year into Firmable. Hit high quite consistently, 175% of target, which looks about 185 meetings from February till May. And my favorite stat was the 26 meetings, I think it was, Jakey, in a week on my last week. So 5 working days at Firmable. So did really well. I have a kind of communications background in journalism. So was new into the role, but really enjoyed the kind of SDR landscape of Australia. And can't wait to kind of dig into the secret sauce, which Chi has told me to call it today. So hopefully can give you guys some advice and tricks.
We love it. Journalism, good at telling stories, good at SDR work. It makes sense. Thanks for that, Hobbsy. Cool. We'll go ahead and we'll get cracking on probably one of the most important things for any sort of sales role, but especially in, I guess, those top of funnel, what I call them entry level type roles, and that is mindset and resilience. Cold calling, it is one of the most challenging roles in the corporate world, and the resilience is a massive factor in every single piece. So I guess the question for Juan and Dan is sort of to dive into a little bit is, how do you handle the rejection? How do you make sure you're not carrying the last call into the next one? After 40 no's, how do you then keep motivated for a yes? So I guess we'll start with Dan. What are you doing? What are you coaching to make sure that the team, the people that you're working with, can take it on the chin and keep on dialing?
Yeah, for sure. And so for context, I'm training kind of SDRs, BDRs, A's across a pretty wide range of teams. Some are the first in their company, some are surrounded by others who might be a lot more tenured.
Yep.
I think the core thing here is it starts off with a kind of like rejection is like the norm, and rejection is inevitable. Like it's actually fine. But what is not inevitable is like finding the lesson from that rejection. I think like every time you get rejected in sales, like in every single call, there's something you can take away. And so I kind of, when I'm training reps, I get them to try and treat their rejection as a curiosity. Like, why was it they got rejected? Like sometimes actually nothing they did wrong. Sometimes it was like, hey, actually, it's like that's not the right contact. It's generally not the right time for the company. It's the wrong industry. Maybe there was an objection they didn't know how to handle. Maybe they didn't really bring any personalized research in. Maybe they gave up a bit too easily on something. And so I think, what's not okay is just going like, oh, hey, yeah, rejection's fine. It's a part of the job, and just kind of going through and making the same mistakes again and again. I think rejection is this like really powerful signal going like, hey, this is your chance to iterate on your approach, whether that's the customers you're selecting or how you're speaking to them. And so what I used to do, when I first started Uber, I would even keep like a rejection log where like every day, like, like for every single call, I would just like jot down like a word or two about like, oh, like, if the call like went wrong or didn't go my way, like what happened. And then you kind of like look, yeah, okay, at the end of the day, just reflect on, well, hey, like what are the patterns in the rejections that did happen? Treat that with curiosity, and then each week focus maybe on one or two things you can uplift or tweak or change. And so, yeah, I think like for anyone who's kind of like going through that journey of like rejection, like your job is like, hey, treat that with curiosity. That's fascinating. It's like sales is just like, for people who love it, it's almost like a puzzle game, and think about, well, hey, like what's the kind of current problem happening here? Like how do I identify the pattern of rejection and what to tweak to kind of get to the next level?
Yeah, awesome. So reframe the rejection, so to speak, and make it about the curiosity piece, and less so just take it as it is, but sort of peel back the layers of the onion.
Yeah. One more thing I'll say there as well is it's like sales is not about convincing 100% of people to buy your product. There's only 40% maybe that are relevant that are even open to changing. And so it's like there's always going to be that chunk who rejects no matter what. And so that's just like part and parcel of the role. Your job is going like, hey, what are the changeable rejections? Let me study those with curiosity. And then someone's like, hey, okay, it's a part of it, on to the next one.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Dan. That's wicked. And Juan, over to you now. I've got here that you actually believe that, some people have it and some people don't in terms of handling the rejection, the hardship that comes with sales. How do you suggest that, I guess, SDRs that are in the trenches right now combat that mental jail that we can fall into?
Yeah, I think from my end, where that comment comes from is more soft skill. And I guess what some people bring to the table and others maybe don't. So when I was speaking to Chia initially talking about what we're going to, I guess, discuss today, for me, it was very clear from the get-go that one of my soft skills, or something that I kind of could bring to the table with very little friction, was the fact that rejection isn't something I'm too afraid of. I guess on the flip side of that, organization, like what Dan was doing in the sense of, keeping a list, making sure you've got a really tight process, is probably somewhere where I failed and needed to really sharpen up. So for me, I guess the overarching idea for me is, look, some people are really comfortable just getting on the phone and getting a no and kicking on to the next one. I've seen other SDRs that kind of have to potentially maybe put themselves in a room, I guess, separate to everyone else, not on the floor, maybe keep it really private. And I guess that rejection hits them a little bit harder or differently. My biggest, I guess, takeaway from this is, if there is something, right, whether it's rejection or lack of organization, or something that you need to work on as a SDR or BDR, it's probably putting those guardrails around what are your weak points, and making sure that those are the priorities. Because again, for me, early on, I realized, okay, look, the rejection bit probably isn't what's going to make me trip. It's more likely the organization and the I guess capability to kind of sit down every day and repeat the process. I'm I guess a very neurospicy kind of person, so I'll end up getting real confused, and I guess we'll go on a tangent as I'm doing today. So for me, it's really guardrailing that. Getting to the office in the morning, for me, I guess organization was a thing. Making sure that before I had a coffee, before I did the push-ups, before Gunna came on, I just sat down and started dialing, and then let everything else kind of happen naturally. So I think just getting comfortable as well comes with repetition and discipline. I think practice obviously makes perfect, but I think it's more so the practice of practicing, feeling it like it's your own game, it's your own script, it's your own talk track, instead of trying to practice being someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a really natural sort of turning point into the next question, Juan. And that is all about the fact that we're all individuals. What works for you, what works for Dan, what works for Ben might not necessarily work for me, because I've got a different background, a different way of communicating, a different way of viewing things. So the best reps are the ones who have often found their own selling style, and they're not playing a character. They're taking what works for them and bringing that forward into the BDR, the SDR, the account executive role. So I guess to throw back to you, Dan, I mean, how do you, I guess, work or encourage people to set up and sell with their own style, lean into it, whilst also obviously, scripting and allowing coaching and frameworks to come into the scene?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. I think like people often talk about like how you find your own like sales style over time. Like I reflect on like the top three when I first started Uber Eats as like an account executive. I was pretty junior at the time. I was in uni. The top three executives had like three different styles. Like one was like super like introvert. He was like actually quite introverted. He was just very like calm, serious, authoritative. So almost like professor vibes. One was like super charismatic, funny, jokey, but he wants to be a best friend. And then one was very like direct, confrontational, like challenger vibes. And like they were the three top performing reps across the whole org with very different styles. So the lesson there is like, just because you come into an org and you see that someone's talking on a phone a certain way, you copying their exact style does not mean that you'll get the results that they're getting. Because what might feel easy and intuitive to them might feel forced, fake, artificial, inauthentic to you. And so look, obviously, like when you're starting off as a rep, hey, probably do have a look at the scripts of the top performers, like, and you might start with that as a foundation, but iterate it over time towards like a style of language that sounds natural to you, and B, an energy that sounds natural to you. I think it's also, there's one is your style, right? Like you're probably gonna have a default of the way that you talk to customers, but I also think a sales rep that only sticks to one style is going to struggle to be like a top performer. Like, at the end of the day, you're going to be dealing with a wide range of customers. Some are very like casual people, some are very formal people, some are very like small talk chatty, some are very like commercial, serious, get to the point. And I think the best sales reps, have their base style and then have almost like a range around that they can drift into to kind of better mirror the person they're speaking with, be a bit more of a chameleon. But like in kind of like finding your style over time, I think a lot of people, focus too much on the script and not enough on actually listening to the person. Like I think you'll find the right style by actually listening to the prospect versus exactly hitting every word that's on that, script you have written down.
Yeah, mirroring, communicating, being a bit of a chameleon to who you're talking to is massive. Thanks for that, Dan. That's great. And I guess trying to throw back over to you, mate, and you're obviously someone that has now built your own style, and it's clearly going well for you. I mean, how did you kind of go through that process of, I'm sure that there were scripts and things that you were told to do versus what you do now. How did you build that, and what impact has that had on your calls?
Yeah, look, I think from my end, having now gone through two different sales orgs, two different products, I think the biggest thing is early on when you join, whether you're a BDR or an AE, I think product knowledge is really valuable. I think I see a lot of AEs that are happy to just play the commercial part and let an SE or someone else technical run point on the actual ins and outs. And that doesn't mean you have to be a software developer, be fully capable of delivering on that technical side, but just understanding how that applies and what that means for a customer, so you can have that in the back. And then the other bit is, again, to Dan's point, something that really helped me was just when I joined, listening to what I thought were the people that I wanted to, in a sense, imitate, find what was working for them, find those snippets that I could then, pocket stories that I could tell myself and have that in the back of my head. And I think those two things, the knowledge and the capacity to, I guess, grab what was working from other people and then shape into my own, gave me what I think is really the biggest thing, is peace of mind on a call. So Dan was mentioning, you want to be able to mirror, you want to be able to on the spot improv. So, you call it, having a bit of jazz, having a bit of improv, just being able to sit there and go, this person has just been rude, receptive, is in a hurry, has time. How do I approach this? And to your point, if you're busy thinking about the script or busy thinking about the product, you don't have enough headspace to go, let's actually mirror the situation and I guess walk through this in the right manner. So I think those two things are pretty big. And the other thing is, look, I think personality, again, comes through preparation. Like if you're not prepared, you can't be personable because you're just wigging out trying to do all the other things. So the more prepared you are, and again, to Dan's point, like for me, what I would do when I would cold call is, I had a lot of friends who were on, and this might be a big no-no for the BDR managers, but I hated speed dialers because I wanted to at least have 30 seconds. It wasn't a deep dive into the person, but if I was going to call Jake, I wanted to know what Jake had done in the last month or two or where he'd worked before. And it was just a quick snippet into his life in LinkedIn or the company, just so that I could come on board with anything that was actually relevant, rather than just slapping back-to-back calls and not knowing who I was speaking to and not having any capability to come across as personable or knowledgeable about the person.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I think, I would imagine the majority of people that are on this call are Aussie and New Zealand focused or centric at least. And I completely agree that when you're calling into Australia and New Zealand, we have a unique scenario in this market right now where, the people that we're calling aren't getting called to the level that people in the US or Europe are. So we don't need to utilize speed dialers to the capacity that they do over there. And then a tool like Firmable can come in and give you the data, so you're actually getting through to people more regularly. The connect rates are just simply better, so we can absolutely get away with that and spending a bit more time on research. Thanks, that's fine. Quickly, we've got a question in the chat, and I'll direct this one to you, Dan, if that's all right. We've got, what if the rejection is driven by behavior and they do not give you feedback to take on board? How do we trigger that conversation?
A clarifying question: when you say the rejection is driven by behavior, what do you mean? As in, like, prospects aren't always going to give you the feedback on why they're rejecting you. It's your job to kind of work out that puzzle. Like if someone's
Yeah.
hanging up on you or saying like no thanks, it's like, well, hey, like it's taking a moment to think, like who was the person that I called? Like how relevant were they to the sale? How relevant was the company to the sale? What information did I bring in that like showed them I knew them in some way? Like was it clear that like I've helped, companies like with similar problems? So I guess like hard to exactly say. It depends on like what was meant by like the rejection is driven by behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
And I
that
think I think
yeah,
that, and I think to sort of build on that a little bit and just sort of what you said earlier about obviously, having the data and having the information on what are the rejections that I'm getting and how am I responding to that so that you can then, at least have the conversation with maybe not the prospect, so to speak, because you're not always going to get the chance to ask them for the feedback with your manager and with your support team around you. So no, I think that does. But if it doesn't, please feel free to jump back in the chat and ask another clarifying question.
for sure?
But I'm most excited for this part of the call. We are going to get Dan and Juan to do a live mock cold call, which is going to be very interesting. We got the master and the person that's the trainee live. So I'll hand over to you guys. I think we'll do it to 3 minutes max, and we'll have Chia on the time, so we don't go over time and we don't let you guys yap too much because that's a real issue by the looks of it. So we'll just let you guys get at it, and I'm really excited for this one. So enjoy, team. We'll get Dan to pick up as if he's a prospect, and we'll go from there.
Beauty.
Alrighty.
All right,
Let's
let's
rip
get
in.
cracking. Ring, ring.
Hello, Dan here.
Hey, Dan, how are you? It's Juan calling from Monday.com in Sydney. How's your day going?
Well, I was honestly like a little bit busy. I'm actually just in a webinar at the moment, so not the best time to chat.
Yeah, that makes a heap of sense, mate. Look, I know I'm calling you out of the blue, but if you've got 5 seconds, I might just give you a quick overview as to why I'm calling, and then it makes sense. Yeah, we can keep having a chat.
Yeah, shoot. What's it about?
Hey, look, obviously, you and I have had a couple of chats. I think we've had the pleasure of meeting in person in one of the early work BDR sessions you had. And I was just going through my, I guess, intent signals here at my office. And I noticed that some of the team is, in a sense, dabbled in Monday once or twice, and you're currently using Notion and HubSpot. Something I'm seeing a lot with smaller firms in this space, potentially in the, I guess, talent industry is really looking to grab that tool grab those tools and optimize this to one system and have that visibility end to end. So for me, I guess, look, as I mentioned, if it's worthwhile, another 30-second chat, I'd love to understand where you guys are at with your tooling, and if it's of interest to maybe look at bringing those all together into a, I guess, unified view.
Oh man, I hate to be honest, like yeah, like Notion's like pretty like working pretty well for us, so probably not looking to switch, but appreciate the call.
Yeah, look, that's fair. I think before I let you go, what's working well with Notion from my end. Again, what we're seeing is if you do have something like a HubSpot or a Notion, there is sometimes some friction across the data flowing from end to end. Is that something you guys are seeing today?
Yeah, I mean, like yeah, to be fair, like we do like Notion's good. We do have a bit of a split system where it's like our B2B CRM's all on HubSpot, and that's working well. We want to keep it there. Like kind of student side, we were doing it on HubSpot, started to kind of half shift over to Notion. Now we're kind of in the process like fully moving it over because like ideally want that in one place, but obviously there's kind of like a bit of logistical effort there.
Yeah, look, and I guess you hit the nail on the head. It sounds like, I guess, centralizing that data really is top of mind. And again, it is what we're seeing now where, regardless if you have the two best tools in the market, if they're siloed, you end up just with a Frankenstein Zapier solution. And again, the features on either tools can be as good as they can be. But if you don't have that talking to each other, then it's pretty much baseless. So if looking to transfer over to Notion is where you're looking to go, then it sounds like doing the complete homework as a founder might make sense. So my recommendation, or at least my suggestion, would be let's hop on a quick call, 15 minutes, and I can maybe show you and tell you why potentially Monday is also an option if you want to go for an end-to-end, what we would call a mini ERP solution from CRM all the way to service. If that makes sense, I've got my calendar in front of me if you want to book in a quick call for a chat.
Like to be honest, man, it's like as in like there's probably not a strong enough case. Like if we're switching from Notion as well, then we have to think about kind of getting rid of like two systems, and so it's like I'm not kind of clear why, like, as in like we switched into something like Monday. I thought it was for like bigger teams anyway. Like Notion's like pretty like flexible, works small teams are already using it. And like we've got a pretty small team as well. So it's like I'm just mindful of the bandwidth of like having to rip up systems and start again from scratch.
Yeah, and look, I think from our end, from a ripping out and replacing, I could say, equally, we could have a situation where we start small. From our end, I support here the SMB sector in APAC, and we're seeing teams across the region moving off of tools like HubSpot and Notion into Monday, again, simply because of that ease of use, but also the capability of having those systems like a CRM and a work management or a knowledge-based tool all within one. I think for me, the biggest differentiator there is going to be the fact that Notion, as again, a great tool, but there's a lot of build involved. It sounds like you're very time poor. From my end, I would love to understand again what a tool that's templatized and ready to go out of the box would be, maybe give back to the team in the sense of giving you back the time to work. If you are a small team, you only have a couple of people, it sounds like you want them on the phones, dialing and or closing meetings, potentially not building out a tool like Notion for a CRM or a service tool or a knowledge-based tool. But again, I guess for me, the recommendation would be, look, it's 5 minutes of your time, do the homework. If nothing comes out of it, nothing, I guess, no hard feelings. We'll have a beer at the next early work session and we can have a laugh about it.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, look, I mean, admittedly, like, yeah, I don't know like too much about like how like the current offering works. I'd only seen it a few years ago. If you shoot through an email, like happy to read through it, and I'll let you know from there if we want to kind of book in a time.
Yeah, beauty. Look, what I'll do is before I let you go, just for the sake of me not forgetting, I do a lot of these a day. I'll shoot you through a placeholder in your calendar now, and that way we've just got a quick 15-minute catch up. Again, feel free to move it around if it doesn't work for you. It just works for me, so I don't forget to give you a bell. And I'll book that in for the end of the week. I've got Friday here. Does 3 p.m. work for you?
Checking. Yeah, Friday at 2 p.m. is actually all right. Like, yeah, hey, chuck it in, and I'll let you know close to the date.
Yeah, easy, beauty. I appreciate it, Dan. I'll be sending that email through, and yeah, hope you have a good selling day. I'll be in touch. Ta.
Thank you, man. Yeah.
Insane. Great
Smashed
job.
it. Jeez.
Snapped it. Got him booked. Okay, guys, and I guess in terms of that, Dan, do you mind just quickly jumping in and talking through a little bit of, I guess, what you liked, what you didn't?
Yeah. So from the prospect side, with Juan, I think he overdid like a really, really strong job. I think what I liked from kind of the get-go, I mean, like tonality and energy was good. It wasn't like too fast, but it was like, friendly, positive. He obviously mentioned that we'd like met in the past, so kind of reminding me that familiarity, any existing connection you have with the prospect. I think the thing I probably like most about the intro though was he brought up kind of like prior research about me. He wasn't like hey, have you guys heard of like Monday, .com before, or like, hey, here's what we do, da 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 da. He already brought up the fact like, hey, he knows that I'm using a combination of like HubSpot and Notion. So he's used those intent signals to already work out, hey, this is my existing stack. And based on that, he's hypothesized a certain pain. And that allowed us to have a much more targeted conversation early on. Whereas he just called me up like, hey, at Monday.com, we help businesses automate this. How are you doing this at the moment? It's kind of, you're starting from square one. So if you can get that information before, it just comes across more thoughtful, more well-researched, and more likely given the time of day. Other things kind of like later on in the call that were powerful. I think there was kind of like a good move there about like when I brought up the fact that like, hey, like we're already using a system and we're kind of happy with it. He kind of called out again the fact that I was kind of using multiple systems, and then shared something he had seen from similar prospects. Like, hey, often when you do have kind of this like fragmentation, there's kind of like issues that happen in terms of information flowing. So it's like even if someone's like happy with the system, sharing what you've seen from other customers in a similar position, and then obviously at the end, and Juan was good in like asking for the meeting a couple times. Like obviously I knocked him back a fair few, but even just like a placeholder is better than nothing. It's kind of like, and he made it feel like low commitment, not too high pressure. It's like, let's meet at this time. It's like, man, hey, look, yeah, for sure. Hey, it's like he actually agreed when I asked for an email, he didn't disagree with me. He's like, oh, I'm not going to send that through. It's like, yeah, cool. Hey, but I'll put in like a placeholder later this week, and like welcome to shift it around. I often say something like, hey, like if it doesn't seem like it's relevant, you cancel it. Don't worry about hurting my feelings. You make a little bit of a joke like that. If I had to give like one like tactical improvement, probably what I'd look at is like kind of towards like the later parts of the call. When I brought up, hey, I was using Notion and I was using HubSpot, and maybe kind of had these two different systems. Obviously, it is good, like when you're making a purchase decision, to I guess like do your homework and look at other options. But like I'm time poor. There's a lot of project management workflow CRM tools out there. Like what I would want to hear is like, hey, for someone in my position, like what's the main advantage that Monday.com is going to give me over, say, like a Notion or a HubSpot in this situation, particularly given like having the additional switching cost to a brand new platform, there's like incremental time spent there. And so if there's a hypothesis around incremental time saved versus say Notion as a system, then I'm like, okay, hang on, maybe that trade is worth it.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Thanks, for that, Dan. And Juan, just very quickly before we move on to the next one, and Dan touched on it briefly as well, that the putting in a tentative time. From there, I imagine it's extremely important to obviously follow up with that to make sure it sits. What would be the process of touching points between then and that meeting sitting for you to make sure that they're actually going to show up?
100%. I think the biggest thing is like as soon as I get off that call, I literally do nothing. And again, as I mentioned, I'm really easily distracted. I make sure the first thing I do is get off the call, send the email through with that information. So I'll jump on whatever AI tool I've got available, quickly grab the transcript, and or if I don't have a transcript, just type in the conversation I've just had, and then whip up an email, follow up with the email, placeholder, I guess, simultaneously. And then from there, normally what I would do is, again, let's say the call was today, Wednesday, we've booked in a call for Friday, usually Thursday afternoon, I'd send a quick text. Again, some people here will say, don't text. My approach is if I've already had a conversation with you and we've been friendly over the phone, I'm going to text you like a normal person. I'm not going to be awkward, emailing you, hey, regards, Juan. I'm going to text you saying, hey, mate, thanks for the chat yesterday. Just reminding you, we've got that placeholder in. Do let me know if anything's changed. I'm happy to move it around. But yeah, other than that, I think, look, from Dan's point of view, like the other thing I want to say is, and it's something I was thinking about, like this could have gone sideways by all means. And it's happened to me in real life. I don't think there's ever a perfect call. I think really the perfect call is the one where you can, I guess, duck and weave as many times as possible and try and get to a outcome. It might not be the best outcome. Again, I didn't get an actual meeting. I didn't get the video call I wanted. I don't think it's a loss. And even if it hadn't been a win, I would have known that Dan is using two different tools, does have some issues, and maybe I can give him a bell back in a couple months and like retest the water. So that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you, team. And thank you both, Dan and Juan. That was really fun and that was really cool. Okay, we'll tap you both out now and we'll tap in Ben and Jelle, which is really exciting. And we'll get straight into it with one of the I guess the often competing things is systems versus just hard work. I think every SDR on this call works really hard. It's just comes with the territory. But some that are succeeding seem to be building better systems. That mean that they spend less time researching and more time talking to people. So I guess what does that actually look like from both prospecting strategy as well as like a workflow perspective? And then, of course, AI and tooling as well. So we'll start with you, Jelle, if that's all right. So what are you teaching your reps to do here? How are you enabling them to set up really good systems to allow them to be on the phones more?
Yeah, I would say overall our intent with the teams that we manage is to we kind of teach them to sell with authenticity. Everything these days is obviously very AI generated, so it's become harder to stand out. And so bigger picture, whenever a technology removes friction from something human, people first tend to celebrate this because it's convenient. And then once it's everywhere, they actually start missing the friction itself, right? Because that friction also signals something to the prospect. For example, the effort that you put into researching a call or the attention that you're trying to give to the prospect. So similar to photography versus a painting, or for example, mass production versus something that was handcrafted. So we try to always stand out in the way that we reach out. What does that actually mean? What we've done from a system perspective is we've consolidated a bunch of tools so that we can actually spend time in a tool that we've built ourselves. So we no longer need to context switch across 7 different tools. All of our signals, they kind of mesh together in one tool that we have, and that becomes our AI native outbound system. So that means more personalized outreaches. We can directly add them to sequences. We no longer need to copy paste from like a sales navigator into ours, for example. And that also allows us to do what we would call warm cold calling. So all these signals, they kind of get combined into the tool that we have, and that allows us to basically build trust when we call these prospects in the first 30 seconds. And the way that we have set up our system is what we would call a 60-40 rule. So what does that actually mean? 60% of our time is spent with below the line users. So individual users or people that we think could be champions. And we just use that to gather intel on how the company operates, how they make money, what KPIs C-level is actively talking about, and then we basically use that we package it, and then the 40% remaining time we basically call above the line decision makers armed with that research essentially. And the second piece I would say is what's been working very well for us. Both I manage both teams in Singapore and Sydney. Is the face-to-face coffee chats. Those have been a major differentiator as well. And our SDRs would actually, or XDRs, they would actually have these coffee chats combined with direct mail, so champagne bottles that we send to their houses, personalized invites, gifts. Like we find out the spouse's date of birth, for example, and we would send champagne bottles.
And just on that, Jelle, so when you say face-to-face coffee chats, are you saying the SDRs are calling to then organize these coffee chats, which are then going on, or what does that actually mean? Sorry.
Physical coffee chats, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that, Jelle. That's awesome. And now over to you, Ben. I know from experience and from seeing it that you're one that most definitely has set up some pretty awesome systems. So I guess just generally speaking, though, what did you do to kind of, I guess, to get ahead and to become what our top performing rep?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. There's not one thing, to be honest, to reference, and I will try to kind of break down things which gave me, I think, an advantage, and none of it's going to differ massively from what everyone said. Jelle has some great points with signals, which I'll probably come on to as a third point, but I'd encourage anyone on this call to experiment and utilize things like ramp ups to work out which style works for you. To take things that you've learned or you see other people using, try them out, but also adapt them to how you would use it. And I think Dan mentioned that earlier, is learning how to kind of be a sponge and pull different things and change your tone and work out how to kind of have a system in place, but then adapt it to each call. And that's going to be, I think, what's going to help you the most. The things that helped me massively was organization. And again, I think that's been referenced. I think having strong systems in place, I think Juan mentioned that as well, having an organization around your day of how you do things and processes. For me, that process was started, I top and tail my day on LinkedIn. LinkedIn wasn't a tool we had to use, but it's definitely a tool that you can arm and use in your arsenal. You can do outreach in many different ways. You can be commenting, you can be just sending messages, connecting with people in similar roles. Anyone that I spoke to on the phone through Fernball, you can have clear visibility on their LinkedIn, and I'll be connecting with those people on LinkedIn, or sending just requests and sending kind of any kind of, commenting on posts and things like that. Being front of mind. One thing that I really, really did at the end of my day on LinkedIn was sending out like Loom videos, taking a bit of time to make a Loom video of using my tool. And that would really help in terms of, just actually doing something personal, taking the time and then getting a much higher hit rate. And people appreciate, I think, effort in that as well. So I think that's really, really important. I think blocking up your day, having your call block, so topping and tailing my day with LinkedIn, but then also having my call blocks, but breaking it up. Like I'll always try and sit on a demo, sit on a kind of call and make sure I understand the product I'm selling and understand why certain calls are going well. It's really important. It's the little effort you put into sitting on and understanding a use case and then going and finding similar companies based on that use case, which you know how to talk about and have plenty of stuff to do. And then lastly, just in terms of having a philosophy as well with my calls, I wasn't always trying to book in on my first call. I was quite lucky that I came from a journalism background. And in journalism, as you can imagine, Jake, you're having to call people in a lot worse situations than just a cold call. They might have lost someone and you're having to get a comment. It's hard calls. And the one thing you'll learn in that is building rapport and also making people feel comfortable. And we've spoken to that a lot in terms of adapting and reading someone. That's a huge part of being an SDR. It's adapting the way that you speak to someone and gauging if they have time, asking for permission. I'll just take a couple of seconds if you have the time. If it's not relevant, you can tell me to get lost, whatever. Making a joke if that's the environment. I think Australia is a really soft sell market.
Great.
And you can read the room, you can have conversations, and sometimes you can get the tentative invite, or you can say, look, I know you're slammed, I'm going to send you the information, I'm going to call you next Tuesday at this time, and let's have a 15-minute conversation with them. It's a combination of all those things. The third thing is kind of AI and the toolage, but I think at the end I might have time to kind of show you guys that,
Yeah.
and it's quite visual, so that might be a better way of going into that.
Absolutely. And I guess I guess in terms of the what I've seen as well is one thing that Ben's really good at was recognizing that the first call is an opportunity to build some rapport, and then we're more likely to get that booked to the second or third call and so on, which I think is a slightly different mentality to a lot of other businesses that I've been involved in. So back over to you. No, Jelle, if that's all right. And I guess I might keep it quite broad. There's a bunch of questions that I'd love to ask you, but we might just keep it quite broad for the sake of the whole group. And I mean, you've been around a lot of salespeople. But what do you see the top performers doing? The skills, the attributes that they embody, that both for the team that you manage as well as just what you've observed out there. What separates the best from the rest?
Yeah, good question. I think salespeople, by definition, they tend to be very good interviewers. So
Yeah.
I think their behavioral patterns they matter quite a bit. So we tend to look for attitude, not necessarily aptitude. So what does that actually mean? Usually, it's people with high agency, self-directed learning skills. In this day and age of AI, it's also people that can build their own AI agents, are comfortable being a bit more technical. So understand Notion's APIs or SDKs, for example. So builders overall. But if I have to kind of summarize it in one paragraph, I would kind of say people that can show me they've kind of gone from 0 to 1 in anything that they've done. If you were a shitty guitar player, but you find a way to become the best guitar player, and if you can show me that you've done that across a couple of different fields, then I know you're going to be a great BDR. I don't really care too much about your sales experience necessarily.
Yeah. No, I think that's massive, and I guess for context as well, people don't know that much, but I came from a business very similar to Early Works, but in New Zealand, and we took a real focus on looking on the traits outside of sales that we know come through, and that was absolutely one of them. So thank you for that. Now I'm conscious of time here, team, and for those that are keen, we will probably run over just by a little bit, but completely understand if you guys need to drop off. Ben, I might just pass back to you now, and throughout this call, we've obviously mentioned tooling, and I think one of the things that has gone through throughout every speaker is that ability to be able to break the ice in that initial cold call and come in with some signals or a reason for calling outside of just, hey, it's a cold call. And keen to hand over to you, Ben, because you were one of the best at doing this, and I think part of that was because you had a real mastery of a tool like Firmable. So keen to show how you use that, if that's all right, mate.
Yeah, just to highlight a question that Chia wanted me to answer from Joseph before I get in, keen to do that, was just around metrics, around what we're aiming for, and this might differ between the team. In terms of numbers of calls and that kind of thing, it's I'm a firm believer of the more dials, the more chance you get of getting meetings, right? And you're not going to beat effort and the amount you put in. I remember the second month in row, I had a particularly hard month. I sent something like 850 emails out in that month. It's completely dependent on where you're at, but I would always aim for 70 calls. We have 50 as a benchmark because the connect rate is good, but in terms of a number I would aim for, I think 70 is your sweet spot. You can bash through 70 calls quite easily, in my opinion, especially if you split up your day into 3 call blocks. It's not actually that many calls. It obviously depends on the length of conversations and the warmth of those calls, but I would always say you're topping yourself up. Similar to that, and to answer that question, better as well, is that I'll be constantly keeping my accounts fresh in terms of I'll be getting rid of probably 2 or 3 companies accounts every week, which maybe I just don't work with, and I'll be adding in 2 or 3, and that will link into what I'm going to show you now anyway. I hope that kind of answers. Okay, Chia, you just got to stop sharing your screen, I think, and then I can just share mine, if that's possible. Let's see if that helps. Cool. All right, guys, I'm just going to jump into Firmable. I don't want to keep this too silly. I just want to show you how easy it is to build out systems in Firmable. So this is the kind of platform that we mentioned. We're just focusing on Australia. We have about 1.8 million companies and just shy of 9.5 million people in there. So the best coverage we can get in region. Every week I mentioned sitting in demos and understanding what is going well for me, what use case is going well, and I want to replicate that. I want to understand that use case and get better quality meetings and call people where I know that are going well. I can simply just summarize that in the AI function, and I can basically create a target list with Firmable. So this is basically, so say I jumped on a few, and I'm realizing fintechs around the SMB mark is going really well in Melbourne, and Melbourne might be my target area. I can put that in there as easy, and it will just add those filters in for me. And when I've got a list like this, then I want to find warmer leads within it. And we've all mentioned collectively the idea of signals. So I would add this list and basically track this list every week via firmable signals. Signals here is basically any kind of movement that we can get on target accounts. So I've got this broad target list I just made of fintech companies in Melbourne. Where's the warmer leads within that list? And like, I think crucially with cold calling, contacting the right people is important. And having the right numbers is always crucial, but also timing is really, really important. You know, making sure you speak to someone at the right time. You can have a perfect pitch, but they could be 2 weeks into a new decision. So what I'm then going to be doing is tracking a load of different things that might indicate growth in those companies, whether that's them joining in sales roles or any kind of roles, whether that is job postings in sales. So these are all kind of companies which have job posted in sales and have growing sales team. I actually booked Airwallex from this, which is going really well internally. But you can basically add on these things, which every single week you can be tracking movements in these accounts. And that's maybe going to be giving you reasons to be calling. Juan had lots of reasons and research into that call, which made it seem warmer. And essentially that's what we're doing. Like if they've attended a certain event, we can have clear visibility and track that and have a reason to call. So taking that 30 seconds before the call to find out a little bit more of what to say on call is going to be really, really crucial. So we can do that on a company level or even on a personal level, the people leaving roles or new enroll, or even role changes. If people have promotions, we can actually get their contact information and have real reason on that phone to call. For me as a rep, that was perfect because I could add in these systems, set them up running for me, and every single Monday I can be adding in 2 or 3 of the companies at the top here which have the most amount of movement, and that's given me a real clear reason to call. And then lastly, when you've got a company, we can also be just jumping in, finding out with Firmable a bit of a breakdown into the market, saving me time on that research, which is all going to be things which is basically arming me with plenty of things to talk about on call. And I think whether it's on Firmable or another tool, utilizing these signals, intent, all these kind of things is crucial, because if you're not using it, you're going to be behind. So you need to be making sure you're tracking and aware of all these things, and then hopefully converting your call 9 times out of 10. So that's a very quick demonstration for you guys there of Firmable and how I would suggest to kind of utilize it, or just utilize things like signals and your intent. I realize I didn't show you intent there, but that's also our intent scores as well. And if you're not using it, I think you're behind.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that, Ben. And uber conscious of time. We've gone over by a couple of minutes here. So everyone that's asked questions in the chat, we've seen them, and we'll make sure that we get a response out to you either personally or in an email. But again, a massive thank you to absolutely everyone that's come along. As Jelle really well put, you could have done anything, but you chose to come along to this. So hopefully you got some stuff out of it. And for all the questions about Firmable, we are more than happy to answer any of those on a demo. So feel free to reach out to me and we'll set that up. But thank you very much. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. As I said, any questions, feel free to message anyone on the panel. But again, a massive thank you to Ben, Juan, Dan, and everyone else that came along. And a massive, and Jelle, a massive thank you to Chia for organising all of this. This is all credit to her and the massive work she did there. So thank you, team. Please reach out. We'll talk when we talk. Cheers, guys.